Ever get sucked into a video game? You know, the kind where you die 100 times but just can't put the controller down?
You're talking about roguelikes, right? Those games have a way of getting under your skin.
Exactly. And what if I told you that that same addictive loop, that die, retry, repeat cycle, has found its way into fantasy novels?
You're not kidding, are you? People are writing books about that.
Yeah.
With the dying over and over again.
Oh, it's a real thing. Roguelike LitRPG. We're diving into that world today, exploring why some readers can't get enough, while others, well, let's just say they don't quite get the appeal.
Sounds like a fascinating, if not slightly masochistic, deep dive we've got planned today. What are we looking at today?
We're basing our deep dive on some juicy excerpts from Amazon reviews and an article from Level Up Publishing. They really break down the nuts and bolts of what makes this genre tick.
Level Up Publishing.
Yeah.
They always have their fingers on the pulse of what's new and interesting in the lit RPG world.
Right. They do some great work. Okay, so our case study today is Pasted Text, Roguelike, the latest offering from author Paul Bello.
I've seen that title floating around. The cover is pretty eye-catching. Kind of a retro gaming vibe, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you've got that right. Now, the Amazon blurb, it throws us right into the thick of it. VRM or RPG setting, quest for some legendary magical artifact, and, of course, the ever-present threat of virtual death. You know, typical fantasy stuff, right?
Right, the usual. Swords, sorcery, and the looming possibility of being digitally disemboweled.
Yeah.
Par for the course these days.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. The reviews. Pasted Text is sitting at a respectable 4 out of 5 stars.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. So people are enjoying it.
Some are absolutely loving it, like over the moon for it. Others, not so much.
Ah, the great divide of reader opinion. You see that with a lot of experimental genres.
Yeah, for sure. For example, take Michael K. Eidson, huge fan, gave it a 5-star rave. He called it, and I quote, fun, fun, fun. Said it felt like he was playing a roguelike himself.
That makes sense. It's all about capturing that immersive, addictive quality that keeps you coming back for more, even when you know you're probably going to die a horrible pixelated death.
Right. It's that whole one more run mentality. But then on the flip side, you've got another reader, gave it 3 stars, who, while appreciating the unique premise, found the middle section a bit repetitive, even admitted to skimming a bit.
Repetitive, huh? That's kind of baked into the premise of roguelikes, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
dying and starting over is kind of the point.
Okay. Exactly. It's a delicate balance for authors to strike, keeping those core mechanics engaging without making it feel like you're just hitting the reset button over and over.
It's about creating enough variation within the familiar, enough novelty to keep those deaths and restarts from feeling meaningless.
Tough to pull off, for sure, especially in a book where you don't have the benefit of visual spectacle or, a killer soundtrack to distract from the repetition.
Which actually brings us to another interesting point. One reader, Brett, specifically called out the stealing mechanic. Apparently the main character, he's got a bit of a sticky-fingered problem.
Oh, so he's one of those roguelike protagonists. Can't pass up a good loot opportunity, even if it means swiping from a shopkeeper or two. Sounds about right. And as someone who's maybe borrowed a potion or two from unsuspecting merchants in my fair share of RPGs, I can kind of relate. It's a risk-reward thing, right?
Exactly. It's part of what makes those games so compelling. You're constantly weighing your options, pushing your luck, hoping you don't get caught with your hand in the virtual cookie jar.
But not everyone was thrilled with the main character's, shall we say, relaxed approach to morality. Another reader, Zulin, pointed out, and I think this is a really interesting observation, that even in a virtual world, even in a game, actions should have weight.
Oh, I could see that. You're still interacting with characters, making choices, even if those characters are just lines of code.
Right, and she felt that the main character's lack of empathy for the NPCs, this kind of disregard for the consequences of his actions, well, it made it hard for her to root for him.
It's that age-old question, isn't it? If a tree falls in a virtual forest and no one with a soul is around to hear it, did it really make a sound? Do our choices matter less if the world they're impacting isn't real? It's something philosophers have been debating for centuries, and now, thanks to Roguelike LitRPG, it's something that book reviewers are grappling with as well.
Exactly. And it really speaks to the unique challenges and opportunities of this genre. How do you create meaningful stakes in a world where death is essentially a revolving door? How do you get readers invested in the fate of a character who can just hit the reset button whenever things get tough?
Not an easy task, that's for sure. But hey, that's what separates the digital wheat from the pixelated chaff, right?
So true. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about what actually makes for a successful roguelike lit RPG. What do the experts say?
Well, luckily for us, the fine folks over at Level Up Publishing, they've got us covered. They penned a fascinating article on this very subject, and they argue that it's not just about dying a lot.
It's about more than racking up a high death count. There's got to be more to it than that, right?
You got it. It's about the systems at play, the mechanics that make each playthrough, each life, unique.
So it's like death is just one piece of the puzzle, right? There's this whole hidden structure underneath dictating how the world works, how the game is played.
Exactly. Think of it like this. It's not just about dying. It's about what you lose when you do, and maybe, more importantly, what you carry over into that next life.
Oh, okay. So like losing your stats, your gear, maybe even some of your memories, right? But then maybe you gain a new skill, a hidden perk, something that makes the next run feel distinct from the last.
You're getting it. It's like Level Up pointed out with pasted text and that whole kleptomania thing the main character's got going on. He dies, he gets to keep a skill he swiped from a previous life. So maybe this time he's a master swordsman, but the next, he's a stealthy rogue who can pickpocket a goblin blindfolded.
Oh, that's kind of cool. It's like those skills he steals become part of his permanent inventory, even if his experience points get reset.
Right. It plays into that core roguelike loop. You die, you learn, you adapt, you come back stronger, or at least more interesting. But it's not just about the mechanics. It's about weaving those mechanics into a compelling narrative. And that, my friend, is where things get really tricky.
Because how do you keep readers engaged when the character they're following essentially has a get-out-of-jail-free card for death? It kind of undermines the whole stakes thing, doesn't it?
It definitely presents a unique set of challenges for authors. They have to find other ways to raise the stakes, to make those deaths and respawns feel meaningful, even if the consequences aren't always permanent.
So how do they do it? What's the secret sauce?
Well, the Level Up article, they made an interesting comparison. They said that writing a good roguelike LitRPG is a lot like composing a piece of music, or even like crafting a good stand-up routine.
Wait, hold on. Music, comedy, what do those have to do with dying a lot in a virtual world?
Think about it. Take a simple melody, right?
Yeah.
You hear it once, you recognize it the next time it comes around. But it's the variations, the subtle shifts in rhythm or harmony that keep your ear engaged, that make you want to keep listening. Same with comedy. It's the timing, the delivery, the subtle variations on a familiar joke that keep the audience laughing.
Okay, so you're saying it's not about eliminating repetition entirely, because that's kind of baked into the roguelike DNA, right?
Right.
It's about how you use that repetition, how you subvert expectations, how you create those little moments of surprise and delight within a familiar structure.
Now you're getting it. It's like you think you know what's coming because you've died and restarted 100 times already, but then, bam, the author throws a curveball. Maybe it's a new character, a hidden dungeon, a sudden twist in the plot that makes you question everything you thought you knew.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot between familiarity and novelty, keeping the reader on their toes even as they're guiding their character through the same dungeon for the 10th time.
Precisely. And it's a tough balance to strike, especially a purely textual medium. I mean, in a video game, you've got visuals, you've got sound design, you've got all these tools at your disposal to create an immersive, engaging experience, even if the gameplay itself is repetitive.
But with a book, it's all on the author's words to do that heavy lifting. They have to paint that picture in your mind, create that sense of atmosphere and tension using nothing but their prose.
And that's what makes this genre so exciting, both for readers and writers. It's a constant experiment, a pushing of boundaries. It's taking a concept that, on the surface, seems counterintuitive to good storytelling, death as a core gameplay mechanic, and finding ways to make it not only work, but thrive.
It's like they're saying, yeah, you're going to die a lot, but trust me, it'll be fun.
And you know what? Sometimes it really is. When it's done well, roguelike LitRPG can be incredibly rewarding. It's about embracing failure as a learning opportunity, about finding those moments of triumph, even in the face of overwhelming odds.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the theory, about what makes this genre tick, but let's bring it back down to earth for a minute. Let's talk about our listeners. What about someone who's never even heard of roguelike LitRPG before? Would they enjoy this kind of book?
That's the million credit question, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to dissect a genre and analyze its moving parts, but would someone actually enjoy reading this stuff?
It all boils down to personal taste, doesn't it? Like any good buffet, there's something for everyone in the world of fiction. Roguelike LitRPG, well, it's a bit of an acquired taste, you could say.
So who's the target audience here? Who's going to really savor this unique flavor? Well, I'd say if you're the kind of person who sinks hours into games like Rogue or Nethak, those classic dungeon crawlers where death is just a minor inconvenience.
Or maybe even Hades. That one's super popular these days, right?
Exactly, Hades. Perfect example. So if you're that kind of gamer, then yeah, Roguelike LitRPG, it might be right up your alley. It's all about that same thrill of exploration, that constant cycle of death and improvement.
But instead of staring at a screen, you're, what, using your imagination to bring that world to life?
Precisely. It's a different kind of immersion, for sure. But when it works, it really works. It's like the author builds the world, and your mind, it fills in all the gaps, creates those vivid images and exciting action sequences.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's be honest, not everyone's a hardcore gamer. What about people who, just enjoy a good book? Are they going to be completely lost in this world of respawns and stat sheets?
Not necessarily. I mean, at its heart, roguelike LitRPG, it's still fantasy. It's about heroes, quests, magic, overcoming impossible odds, all that good stuff.
It's just that the journey's a little more fragmented, I guess.
Yeah, you could say that. The path to victory is paved with a lot more tombstones, that's for sure. But that's part of what makes it so unique, so refreshing. It's a different way of looking at the hero's journey, one where failure isn't the end, it's just another stepping stone.
Okay, I can see that. So it might not be for everyone, but for those who are looking for something different, something that challenges the traditional fantasy formula.
Roguelike LitRPG, it's definitely worth checking out. And who knows? You might just discover your new favorite subgenre. There's a lot of creativity brewing in that space. Authors pushing boundaries, experimenting with new ideas. It's a really exciting time to be a fan.
And as those authors continue to experiment, I have a feeling we'll see even more blending of genres, more innovative storytelling techniques emerging from the world of roguelike LitRPG.
I think you're right. It's a genre that's still finding its feet. And that's what makes it so fascinating. It's like a wild frontier, full of potential. And who knows what we'll find out there as we delve deeper.
And on that note, dear listeners, we're leaving you with one final thought to ponder. What if our own lives were roguelikes? What skills would you want to carry over after each respawn? What kind of character would you build knowing you had infinite chances to start over, to learn, and to evolve?
It's a question worth considering, don't you think? Even without the literal respawns, our lives are full of challenges, setbacks, and opportunities for growth.
So embrace the unknown, learn from your mistakes, and keep striving to level up. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, happy reading.